you can start to say like mantras to yourself, like, I know that I can trust myself. I know that I can slow down and savor, and you can just sort of repeat certain things to yourself. And over time, when you talk to yourself a certain way, that's what you start to believe, and that's what you make reality. And I think a lot of the same is true with intuitive eating and trusting yourself, is that all good relationships are built on trust and communication, right? And so you have to cultivate that within yourself. You can't just expect to just trust yourself. You have to cultivate that within you. And that happens by like trying and giving yourself a chance. And then I think the vehicle through that is mindful eating.
Hey there, welcome to the Graced Health Podcast, your source for aging strong in your physical, mental, and spiritual health. My name is Amy Connell. I'm a weight neutral certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who loves walks with friends, chocolate, and Jesus. Whether you're looking to grow stronger as you age, nourish your body, mind, and spirit, or fit all the pieces of your health together to holistically thrive, this is the place for women over 40. I'm here to guide you in the areas I can and bring on experts in the area I'm still learning. And of course, we cover it all in a whole lot of grace. I'm so glad you're here. And hey, if you are new here, I invite you to check out season 19, starting January 9th, 2024, to fully understand the foundation of this show. In short, this is a grace-filled, Christ-centered show focusing on women over 40 who want to age resiliently in a holistic way. And then be sure to check out the episode 30 plus non-gym ways to improve your health and grab the free download that goes with it. That too is in season 19 and it aired in February 2024. All of those links are in the show notes. Now, what do you get when you combine culinary nutrition, eating psychology, and intuitive eating? You get today's episode, and I know you're going to love it. Love it. I also know you're going to gain so much from it because according to the survey I invite all new subscribers to take, over 50% of you struggle with meal planning and prepping. And if you are like me and transitioning to intuitive eating, I think you'll find today's conversation creates such gentle space for growth. Today, I'm speaking with Eden Berk, and we explore just creating and cultivating a joyful, flexible relationship with food. Jenny shares her personal journey from years of disordered eating to becoming an eating psychology coach who helps people tune into their innate wisdom around hunger, satisfaction, and nourishment. She provides practical tips for slowing down, savoring meals mindfully, and developing trust in your body's cues. We use that word a lot throughout our conversation. She also provides us some wonderful tips to manage meal planning if that is one of the challenges that you have, like me. Like I told Jenny, I have been married for almost 27 years this summer. I have been meal planning for almost 27 years this summer. I still don't like it. It is still a challenge for me. And so I love some of the tips that she provides. I think you'll find Jenny's compassionate, insightful guidance will encourage you or inspire you to approach food with more self-kindness, maybe even some curiosity, maybe some grace. And I just think that you're going to love this episode. I know I did and got just super excited about it as I was re-listening to it and editing. Let me tell you really quickly a bit more about Jenny. She is an eating psychology coach, a culinary nutritionist, and #1 best-selling author of the book, The Body Image Blueprint. Toward the end, we do talk about Jenny's meal planning club, and I do have that in the show notes. And Jenny was so generous and gave us a free month in the meal planning club. So if you join that, go use that link and you will get a free month. Okay, let's jump into my conversation with Eden Berk. I am so thrilled to have Jenny Eden Berk with us today. And just a bit of a backstory. I actually met Jenny because I subscribed to her newsletter and it is so wonderful. And then we started corresponding and I said, I've got to have you on because we have so many similarities. Jenny, I'm thrilled you're here.
I'm so happy to be here with you too, Amy. Thank you so much.
I have been looking forward to this time with you for weeks because we had to reschedule and now here we are back are. And I'm like, I finally get to meet Jenny because I get to meet her. You come in my inbox every week and I highly,
Wow.
highly recommend people get your have it, made it, want it. Did I say it in the right order?
Have it, made it, want it. Yep, that's right.
Okay. Yes, Wednesday. And that it's just a wonderful email to get with all kinds of goodies in there. So I'm so glad you're here on the Grace Health podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to finally connect with you. And this is going to be such a rich conversation. I'm really excited about the topic and everything we're going to cover.
Yes. Yes, me too. Me too. So you, I know, spend a lot of time promoting living a healthful, joyful relationship with food and eating. I know many of us in this kind of content creator space who are out there trying to help educate people have a story behind the passion of what we're doing. I was wondering if you could share yours.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share my story. Like many people, it started as a child where I was really observed a lot of dieting in my family. My mom was always on a diet. And it wasn't like a blatant, oh, let's talk about food and eating and weight loss. But a lot of times children can really pick up on how their moms feel about their own bodies and their own relationship with food. And because I'm a very intuitive person, I internalized that very early on. So food was kind of always an issue. It was often yes, you should love food because food is love, but don't love it too much because if you really love it too much and you eat too much, then you're going to gain weight and blah, blah, blah. And it was just like this cascade of fear for me because I started to kind of conflate weight loss or being thinner with love and acceptance and admiration and all these things, which of course now I realize they're totally separate from one another. But because, growing up in the 80s, there was the Scarsdale diet. Weight Watchers has been since the 60s. And it created a really difficult relationship with food for me, mostly because my mom is actually a gourmet chef and she went to culinary school when I was a kid. And when I came home from school, we didn't have apples and peanut butter for snacks. I'd come home and there were swans made out of pastry, swimming in a pool of ganache, and it was just every day was something really special. And I really enjoyed eating and I really loved communing with people to eat. And it was always a sense of comfort for me. So, I kind of hopped from diet to diet to diet my whole life, really. And I started working at a health and weight management company in the early 2000s, where I stayed for 13 years as a health educator. And it was a company that really focused on meal replacements as a means to lose weight. And what I saw over and over again were people would come and do this. It was like an 800 to 1200 calorie diet, very strict. It was a behavioral component and there was a medical component. And I was teaching classes and helping the clients to kind of do the program and counsel them through it. And what I saw was, yes, people were losing weight, but they were having very disordered eating. And oftentimes, once they lost the weight, they would leave the clinic and then we'd see them again 6 months or a year later. So there was a lot of recidivism. And I started to think wait a minute, maybe we're not actually helping people. Maybe we should be thinking more about what's at the root cause of why they're eating and why they feel that they need to binge eat or overeat or emotionally eat or stress eat. So I started to become really curious about that. I ended up getting my certificate in eating psychology. And it was shortly after that I ended up leaving the company and starting my own practice because I started to realize even when I was there, I can't tell you how many times I did the diet and how many times I felt crazy about food and hungry all the time and feeling oh my gosh, this is what it takes, and over exercising and not enjoying food anymore at all. So when I left, I really was able to rebuild that love of food that I had as a child that had left me for so long. And it was such a grounding feeling. And it was so expansive at the same time that I was I just knew I wanted to help other people do it as well.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we could have our whole conversation off of just that one answer to that question. I have so many comments, so I'll make them quick. But it sounds to me like, number one, your mom showed her love to you by food and by making things. And it's funny, I just had a multi-week house guest and I didn't really know him before he stayed. It was one of these, it was just kind of a surprise thing. And I told him, I was like, you will soon learn that I show that I care about people by making food for them, by, feeding them. And I mean, it sounds like your mom did that so well with you. And yet there was a bit of a narrative that you probably didn't have the language for it at the time, but kind of a diet culture language.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and you can't blame your mom. I mean, how many of us have lived so much of our life? I mean, she knew what she knew.
That's right.
And we know more now and we know better now. So, but just the confusing messages too that you received. And I love the discernment that you have that you had in that old job and just going, wait a minute here. Like, let's use some critical thinking. And we're saying some of the same things, which is what the science has told us now and
Yeah.
what the research has. And I know you have done a lot of research as well. So yeah, I thank you for sharing that, Jenny. I mean, that's a great story. And I tell you what, I mean, coming home to ganache and everything else, that sounds awesome.
It was pretty great. And everything you said is so true. I don't blame her at all because she was also part of that diet culture. And so was her mom. And so we're like, a lot of this is long time of many generations of internalized, not like body negativity and diet culture and demonizing food and everything else.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And and again, it's okay. Well, now we know more and we're learning more. And me and many of my community are starting to change our relationship with food and exercise into more of an intuitive eating philosophy.
That's great.
And that's something at the beginning of this year, actually, as this is airing, I kind of put a stake in the sand. I was like, we are intuitive eating based here. And so it's something that I have transitioned over to, quite honestly, during the course of learning and having conversations like this of this show and the piece that I have gotten from it. And so I'm of course hoping that other people get the piece too as we go along, because it's a lot of relearning. It totally is. And so to that end, I know you do operate from an intuitive eating perspective. When I talk with people, and so I'm a nutrition coach as well, I'm not certified in intuitive eating.
Mhm.
But when I just talk with people about food and kind of the principles behind it, the biggest pushback I get is, but if I don't have parameters around what I eat, then I'll just eat too much. Or, I don't trust myself to stop if I enjoy the ganache in the middle of the afternoon or, anything like that. So I'm just wondering, with all of the education and experience that you have with this, if you have any encouragement or guidance to someone who might be feeling that.
Yeah. And first of all, it is so normal to feel that way because you've had the experience for so long that you actually can't trust yourself because you've probably tried it. When you've probably said, don't have sugar, and then you've had sugar, or you've said, I'm not eating after 6, and then you ate after 6, or you have many, many experiences that show you, that prove to you, which is the narrative you already have, that you can't do this. Right. So like that's already sort of ingrained a bit. I also think that when we are immersed in diet culture or when we've been on many diets, there's often a scarcity mindset that becomes sort of part of us where we have it, and it almost shows up as like a fear or anxiety. And it actually can raise our cortisol, thinking about, making yourself not eat this, trying to use willpower, scarcity mindset. Often with diets, it's this many calories or no fat or none of this, or like you can't eat after this time of day. And what happens is that people get into this like fear cycle. It's a fight or flight response of, yet albeit on a smaller level, but that feeling of scarcity creates fear in us. And so one of the things that I often work on with people is to create that sense of abundance. And the way to do that is to give yourself permission to eat. So I remember I had been doing this years already. And I remember my husband brought home like cranberry juice or something. And I'm like, ooh, I really want cranberry juice. And I'm like, no, I can't drink my calories. And I said this like, I have done all this work and I still immediately was like, no, I can't drink the calories. And I had to coach myself and say, no, you just want to like a little sip of this. You haven't had this in a really long time. It tastes so good. So it's over time, you have to start to trust yourself by slowing down and by questioning and talking back to the narratives that you already have. Like, well, I can't be around that chocolate because I always end up eating the whole box, or I can't have cookies because I used to like really believe I can't have these foods around me because I can't be trusted because I'm going to binge and I'm going to overeat. When in fact, it was really myself holding myself back, like that I didn't even give myself a chance. One of the things that I would say to somebody who feels that way, because I definitely felt that way too, is to slow down. And this sounds a little bit like out there, but if you slow down and you're actually tasting your food and you're really, kind of leaning into the mindfulness piece of it. I'll give you a quick example. When I started learning mindful eating, I became a mindful eating instructor, and they did this exercise where we had to have like cheese and crackers, and we had to pick some crackers, and I picked wheat thins because I used to be able to eat like a box of wheat thins. I'm like, I can't be around wheat thins. And we did this exercise and I was eating them. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't even like wheat thins. Like I was like, I get to break up with the wheat thins. Like it's you, not me. Like I was like, I really truthfully didn't enjoy the taste. And that's what happens when you can slow down and you can savor your food, and you're pushing away all that negativity and that worry in your head that this neutral thing, this energy source, is good or bad. You've already decided, right? So when I was able to push that away and say, like, well, what do I think? Like, what do I actually think? I didn't like it. And so it's never been an issue again, right? And so you can do this with other types of foods too, where yes, there are going to be times when you are feeling really tired, or you're incredibly stressed, or you're overly emotional, or it's that time of the month, or whatever it is. And yeah, you may eat a little more than you typically would. But over time, if you continue to slow down and really savor your food, and you have that abundance mindset, like saying to yourself, I can eat as much as I want of this, and I do not need to beat myself up. Like you can start to say like mantras to yourself. Like, I know that I can trust myself. I know that I can slow down and savor, and you can just sort of repeat certain things to yourself. And over time, when you talk to yourself a certain way, that's what you start to believe, and that's what you make reality. And I think a lot of the same is true with intuitive eating and trusting yourself, is that all good relationships are built on trust and communication, right? And so you have to cultivate that within yourself. You can't just expect to just trust yourself. You have to cultivate that within you. And that happens by like trying and giving yourself a chance. And then I think the vehicle through that is mindful eating.
I really like how you said cultivate the trust. And that's such a good example, because we don't just meet someone on the street and totally trust them. It grows, and it's a relationship. And I feel like when we do that, what you've just described is so empowering as well. It's like slow it down, give yourself a chance, just trust yourself as you go, and grow that relationship. That's so good. That's so good. Now, kind of along the same lanes. And so I guess I've made one assumption about you, and I want to clarify or correct this, but my assumption is you do operate kind of in an intuitive eating perspective. Okay. Now, I've also believe, if I've read your emails correctly, that you are also a plant-based eater. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I would love to know more about this, just because I think so many of us are evaluating the things that we have always believed to be true, or we're like, well, I do this, or I eat this, or I don't eat this, and all of that kind of stuff. I'm curious how you partner being a plant-based eater with intuitive eating without demonizing the other foods, because that's real easy to see. Like, oh, well, I eat plants, but I don't eat, and I don't eat meat.
Yeah.
And so I just I was just wondering if you could kind of do that, because I feel like this might apply in a broader sense. Maybe not someone's not necessarily a plant-based eater, but maybe like me, for example. I was just having a conversation today with my mother-in-law. I was like, I love yogurt and I think that there's so many wonderful things about it, and my body does not tolerate it very
Mm-hmm.
well. And so I just can't have it. And so I think that we can take it and kind of apply to our own little perspectives. But I would love to hear more about that, or about your walk or journey with intuitive eating and being plant-based and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's very salient because there are so many things that people have to navigate in our food world. Like if you're gluten free, or if you have other food allergies, or there are just other restrictions that you need to follow because of a medication you're on, or something like that. It definitely can impede in some way that path for you. Actually just wrote a whole article about intuitive eating on certain medications and how you can start to tune into your hunger and satiety cues even when you're on medication. But what I would say is, for me, plant-based eating isn't about, I don't I don't do it because it's so healthy. I don't do it because, I mean, that's a side that I think is great. And I'm thrilled by that, but I don't demonize meat, for instance. And I cook meat and chicken and fish for my family and things like that. But I think your question is a really good one because it can also lead to orthorexic type of thinking. And I
Mm-hmm.
definitely struggled with that when I was first making that transition into, what I was doing at the diet center versus like, how do I actually build an intuitive eating practice and really listen to what I need. And I think the easy answer for me was that I don't gravitate towards meat. So it wasn't like I was battling with myself. Like I have no interest in it. And I think when there is something you really love, like yogurt or, something, and your body's just like, I think that can be really difficult because there's a cognitive dissonance happening. Like you like it, your mind likes it, but your body's like, this isn't going to jive with me. And I think this is a really good tie into to the previous question where you can start to say like, okay, well, what can I have that's going to still satisfy me? And
Mm-hmm.
you can have more conversations with yourself. You can communicate like, okay, yogurt doesn't really make me feel that great, but what's something else that I could kind of say yes to right now that isn't going to make me feel deprived, that I can really enjoy and savor, and that is going to lead me to the same path, which is nourishment and joy with food, right? So it's more of like a yes and like, yes, you can try it. Maybe you take a lactate tablet beforehand, or maybe you just say, you know what, I'm out with the girls and I want pizza today, even though I know that I may regret it later. And that's a choice that you're making. It's still an intuitive choice. You're making that choice despite the fact that there may be a consequence. But I think, again, it brings back that trust and communication and listening, honestly, listening really deeply to what it is that you're craving or what it is that you want. Because a lot of times we have like an immediate thought, like, I want ice cream, and there's nothing else that's going to do, like I want ice cream. And when you can have a conversation with that, well, why do you want ice cream? Like, what is it that's triggering? Oh, it's because my kids are fighting. And I always pull out the freezer and grab the ice cream when they're fighting because I'm stressed. And you start to understand what it is that's bringing you to that decision. And once you can do that, then you can say like, but you know what else would do that for me? Like a really great piece of bread right now, or with like hummus. I don't know. I'm making it up, but something else. And that's the beauty, because you can pause and you can say, I don't have to just instinctively go for whatever it is that I'm wanting in that moment. I can actually like really work it out so that it's healthy and feels good to me now, but also later, also on the back
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. Like how you say, having the pause and asking ourselves those questions. And it's funny because I've had a couple conversations on this podcast with Lori Massicott, who's an alcohol-free coach. And I do not live fully alcohol-free, but I have, through my conversations with her, I have really changed my relationship with it. Not that it was like terrible, but rather than like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out, I need a glass of wine. It's like, okay, I'm stressed out. What am I feeling? Like, what's the trigger of this? And so it's the same type
Yeah,
of internal communication that you're talking
absolutely.
about with the food.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely true, because you're bringing up, what do we turn to when we feel uncomfortable?
Right.
What are the things that we turn to when we feel stressed? And what are some alternatives that without demonizing food or saying this is good and this is bad, what are some non-food related things that can help regulate your nervous system right now, or that can help you feel more grounded right now? And so that your decisions fit not only the narrative of this moment, but like what are my goals? What do I actually want for myself? I want to have a balanced, healthy, happy, joyful relationship with food. And that means sometimes flexibility and not being so rigid or, inflexible. I think that's really important because diet culture really demands that we're very, stringent, and that we have to follow, like, we have to track our macros and our calories, and we have to be perfect and data driven and all this stuff. And really the other end of that is this idea that we can like flow into what it is that we want. And we can trust that we know, just like when you were a child, like if your mom tried to put food in your mouth, you'd like, move your head back and forth. You'd start throwing forks on the floor, right? Like, when
Yeah.
you're a kid, you know exactly what you want and what you don't want and how much and when to stop. But then it's really the adults in your life that say, like, sure, maybe you're still hungry, or like, you can't still be hungry. And so we start to lose touch with those inner cues. And that's why I say a lot of this is about deep listening. We're unlearning a little bit some of those old patterns, and we're setting the foundation down for like, what is true now for me? Because who you were even 10 years ago, your body may need different nutrients, and there are different seasons, I guess, of ways of eating.
Oh, totally. Totally. I've gone through a couple iterations in the last 10 years, and I am like right in the thick of perimenopause. And so I have definitely I need to eat differently
Mm-hmm.
than I did 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And I really like how you talk about having a joyful relationship with food requires flexibility and putting away those stringent rules. And the other thing too, as you were talking about like feeding your kid and turning your head, I've given a lot of thought to about this, because I don't know about you, Jenny, but there's a lot of things I wish I would have done differently when my kids were little. And I can only speak for me, but the like, eat one more bite, eat. I'm like, honestly, if I'm totally honest, it was just me being selfish at dinner time because I wanted them to eat a lot so they would sleep through the night.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I'm just being honest here.
No, that is so true. Like, all the moms listening understand what that feels like.
Yeah.
That desperation of needing sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, man, and I mean, my people know I love my sleep, and sleep is so important, but I wish I would have understood the long term impacts that potentially has, because then you're overriding your child's own internal system that works really well. Okay. So now I want to turn a little bit, because I know you have some wonderful resources about meal planning.
Mm.
And the reason I wanted to talk with you about this is I have a survey that whenever someone joins my email list, I invite them to take a survey just so I can get to know them better, and what's their ages, and all of this. What do they do for their, or what kind of role do they have during the day? And I have so many people who click. I have like, how to list several things, what describes you best. And so many of them, Jenny, is something like food prep and meal
Mm.
planning. I just can't. And you, Jenny, can. And so I thought you were a perfect person to come on and just gently guide us through this of helping. So for the people who are feeling overwhelmed with meal planning and they haven't ever like done this consistently, where do they start? What would you recommend that they start doing?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Meal planning is often the bane of people's existence, and it is extremely hard. I happen to have, I haven't been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have some executive ADHD something, where my organizational skills are just not inherent. Like, I've had to build systems, right, to become a better meal planner. I'm somebody who likes to be flexible and like go with the flow. Like, I don't want to be tied down to this meal because the girls might invite me out for like whatever, or and so in the same way that I approach intuitive eating, I also approach meal planning. And that means having becoming mindful and intuitive about it, in terms of taking that bird's eye view. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once a month, and actually looking at I like to do it for the week, because I cannot plan. Things are, I have 3 kids, everything's crazy all the time. And so I like to do it at the week. And I'm like, okay, what's going on this week? Oh, Serena has play practice till 7. So-and-so is working here. I got to pick up this one there. And I look at it and I determine like how many meals we're actually going to be having together at home, how many that I'm actually going to have to cook. So that's the first step, is like just really like taking a minute to like examine what the week is going to look like, right? Because you don't want to like do all this stuff and go shopping and prep and then realize like, oh, no one's home to have dinner together for the next 3 nights. And then you're wasting it. At the same time, I also want to really acknowledge that not everybody has like 2 hours on a Sunday to just batch cook their casseroles and all this stuff. And even if I had that time, I may not consistently want to do that with my time. I'm just being honest myself. Like, I'm not always consistent, and that's okay, because it's not about perfection and it's not about doing it every single day. But what I've learned over the years is there's a few things that have helped. One is looking at it a week by week. The next thing, if you have children, I think having them involved is helpful. I happen to have older children, so like they are intricately involved in the meal planning process with like, what do you want? You have to like poll your people. Like, what do you want for dinner this week? What are you willing to try this week? We have this thing where we like try a new vegetable or fruit every week, or a new ingredient. And then we assess it and we decide, are we going to keep this in rotation or not? And then you start to build your inventory based on that over time. It's one of those things where you just have to start. And if you don't want to batch cook, that's okay. One of the things that I have done that helps me a lot is anchoring. I call it anchoring. I think it's called stacking, where like, oh, I'm making a smoothie. Oh, okay. This is a great time to make extra and put them in smoothie packets and stick them in my freezer, because I'm already doing it. You know what I mean? And all that's
Right.
required is just making a little bit more of it. Same thing with like Mason salad jars. I love, like if I'm making a salad, I'll just literally make extra and stick them in jars and put them in the fridge. And then I have my lunches I can just grab when I want. I also think it takes just, a certain level of what I'm calling mise en place. It's called everything in its place. And this one thing has turned around my whole prepping existence. And it actually makes me excited to cook, because what it actually is like gathering and measuring and doing all the things in advance when you're looking at a recipe. So like I create these little meal kits on sheet pans, and I like, before I do anything, I make sure everything is in place, because I'm somebody who would be like sauteing something and then realizing you got to stick in the diced, onions, and I haven't even like cut the onions yet. And right. And that can turn you off to cooking, and it can make you feel like, well, I can't do any of this. And so that one thing really helped me to turn that around. The other thing I would say is start with like planning 1 or 2 meals a week, and then be okay with like, okay, takeout, we're going to do takeout. We're going to do leftovers. Some nights I just do like an Amy's frozen meal. If I don't feel like cooking, or there are going to be days where I haven't planned anything and it's just one of those weeks, and that's okay. You can learn how to like move from the present moment. So when that happens to me, my whole mantra is it a macronutrient balanced meal? So can I make sure there's a protein somewhere? Make sure there's a healthy fat somewhere? Is there fiber? And that way you can cobble together a meal that doesn't necessarily have to mean like, dinner in the traditional sense. Like sometimes it's avocado toast with like some egg on top. I don't eat eggs, but I put like pepita seeds. And so you're thinking of it more as instead of this perfectionist mindset, is this like, what does my family need? What do I need? And how do I move forward to providing that? I'm actually just recorded a presentation about mindful meal planning. And these are all the techniques and strategies that I talk about there. The last thing I'll say is I am devoted to Purple Carrot, which is a meal kit delivery service. It's a plant-based one. And for anybody who wants to just start out, who really is not who've never done meal planning before, doesn't feel confident, I would highly recommend trying like Blue Apron or one of those meal kit delivery services. Because for me, it's the decisions that are the hardest to make. The implementing is often not hard. It's what should I make? And what should I make Tuesday? And then like there was some research that like 60% of people don't know what they're going to make for dinner by 4:00 in the afternoon. Right. And think about that. You've made all these decisions during the day. you're exhausted, and you're much more likely to be like, well, let's just go to McDonald's, or let's just like order takeout when it's like that. But if you could even just make a few decisions in advance,
Yeah.
right? And then make just like, even if you don't take any steps to like prepare it, but like just make the decision, you're going to feel so much better, because like, oh, I know I have ground beef, and okay, we're just going to have pasta with meat sauce tonight. Boom. That's okay.
Right.
Not every week is going to be, and then there are going to be weeks where you feel like you have a lot of energy and there's a lot of motivation, and you do have 2 hours to cook, and you're going to be really proud of yourself. And then the next week, everything's going to, fall apart, and you're not going to be able to do anything. So be compassionate, be kind to yourself, and just start. Like, I would definitely say, go get a meal kit delivery service. I've become such a great cook because of Purple Carrot, just because I'm practicing all the time. I hope that's
Oh, that's
helpful.
so good. No, that is. I love the little nuggets there. We love very applicable tips. And I want to go back to the one of the very first things that you said in answering that question. And I just want to thank you for your honesty and saying, look, this is hard. I have meal planned since I got married, which was either 6 or 7 years ago. I don't remember off the top of my head, 7, I think. And it has changed a lot. It has evolved a lot, going from being a newlywed with, limited income, and, being then having kids. And I mean, just, it has definitely evolved. So I've always done it, and I still hate doing it. I mean, you would think after 27 years that I would be like, okay, I get this, but it's just kind of a pain. Though I will say one little trick that I have learned, because, I get all these emails, right? Like, I get emails and a lot of them will have recipes on them and stuff like that. And so one trick that I have started doing, because I meal plan on my computer, on my digital calendar, I will, if when I see a recipe I like, I don't pin it on Pinterest, I don't do this, but I actually will take the URL, I'll copy it, and then 2 weeks from tomorrow, I'll put it in as the meal, and I'll just say whatever it is, and I'll put the URL. So that way, when I go to meal plan in the future, I can access that, and it's one less decision that I have to make. So I'm very proud of myself for figuring that one out.
Yeah, and you should be, because that's a step forward, right? And so many people are so, convinced that they have to, if they're going to endeavor to do something like this, they have to be perfect. It has to be perfect every single week, and you have to, no. Like, there are going to be good weeks, and there are going to be weeks that are harder, and really, it's just having the patience and compassion for yourself to keep trying different things.
Yes. Yeah. And Jenny, I know you have some meal planning. It's a meal planning club. So tell people about that and what it is and what they get when they sign up for that.
Yes, thank you. It's the Meal Planning Club. This is a club that my mom and I actually run together. My
Oh,
mom, the gourmet
fun.
chef. So it's really wonderful, because we're building in both my eating psychology and culinary nutrition expertise, along with her 30 plus year career as a New York City chef. And we will do like food demos, and we'll talk about preparing meals for the week, and we'll support one another in the Facebook group, and we'll like cheerlead each other and give each other ideas. And there's live coaching on the calls, and there's over 120 previous sessions that you get in the membership. So we have all different demos. I have an inventory spreadsheet that you can download and use like before you go to the store. And so you can actually keep track of what you need each week. And there are a lot of great resources in there that you would have for a full month.
Oh, that's so helpful. That's so helpful, because the thing too is then it's a framework, and it's a starting point of like, okay, here it is. And if you want to use and do every single meal, that's wonderful. And if you want to kind of start applying some things like where you're talking about, with kind of being a little more intuitive to what you want, what is right for your family, then you can make some adjustments. So that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yes.
And you've been super generous and have extended a free month, and especially to all of the access to the previous sessions and meal planning resources and all of that. So I will have the link in the show notes where you can get that. And that, I believe that link that you gave me, Jenny, has the free month in it.
The free month is attached to that. And we would be so delighted to have you, come to the live sessions, where even if you watch on the replay, they're going to be incredibly helpful. And I, invite each and every one of you to join us. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds great. Thank you. Okay. I've got some questions I ask all of my guests. One is I love learning about people's tattoos because I have found that when people choose to put tattoos on their body, it's often for a reason or they have a meaning behind it. So I was wondering if you have any tattoos, and if so, if you would mind sharing what it is and the meaning behind it. And if not, but if you had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
I love this question so much because I also love tattoos. I love observing them and admiring them in other people. I've never had the courage to actually go for my own. I wanted to probably about 10 years ago, and I was debating back and forth, but I ultimately decided not to. But if I did, I ended up buying like stick on ones, like temporary tattoos, because I thought they were really fun. But I would probably get like a little tree on my wrist, or I like those like little geometric shapes, very minimal, or like a feather or something like that. Something, based in nature that is minimal and probably black and white, not color.
Not a bunch of color. Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay. Tell people how they can connect with you and especially how they can sign up for these emails that I get from you that I love so much.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. So you can find me at www.jennyedenberk.com. And if you go to that site, there is a link to join my free email course, which is a mindful eating course. That's 7 days that you'll learn really the basics of how to start a mindful eating practice. And when you do that, you'll automatically get enrolled into my weekly Wednesday newsletter. So that's a really good way to get in touch. You can also find me on X, Twitter, and Instagram at the handle Coach Jenny Eden. And I don't know if you know this, but I also have a Substack called Just One More Bite with Jenny Berk. So that's something you can find as well. I have another series on there. I love writing, and I love doing content for people. So it'd be great to connect with everyone here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes as well. Okay. So I would love for you to summarize. I don't know where that was. Provide a synopsis. There you go. That's what I was looking for. And what is the one simple thing that you would like my community to take away from our conversation, big or small, but just one simple thing?
Yeah. I think the word that really resonated with me today is the word trust. And I think that if you can cultivate trust and communication with yourself by slowing down, by the power of pause, and by learning some techniques, whether it's vagal tone exercises or, breathing exercise, yoga, really learning some self-care tools to help regulate your nervous system is going to be a really easy, and not easy, but it's a really great way to start. And I think that when you start to implement some of those things, you cultivate that deeper relationship with yourself. And that leads to trust and communication and really feeling like you know yourself and you know what's right for you. And that's very liberating and very empowering. So I would say definitely that's the path, is to challenge those voices that say you can't trust yourself and start to really listen and find out where your innate wisdom is, because it's absolutely there, and it's there to guide you and nourish you and help you find the foods that are best for you.
So good. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day. Did you know that if you listen to your podcast on Apple Podcasts and you do not play a show you follow for more than 15 days and you haven't played the last 5 episodes, that Apple will pause downloads for that show? I know I have shows I love but don't catch every single one, and I've had to hunt down those shows so I can find and listen when they have dropped off my feed. I don't expect you to listen to every single episode we have here, and so that may happen to you. Here's a workaround for the Grace Health Podcast. When you sign up to receive my email updates, you'll not only get a sneak peek at that episode, you'll also get all the links discussed, and sometimes I throw in a little bonus here and there. Go to gracedhealth.com/podcast to sign up for these weekly episode sneak peeks, and you will never miss knowing what that episode is.